We're basically going to make a background for our little tank project, and we're just going to paint it in. You'll see how that works as we move along. Okay, first we're going to create the plane. We need to go to Create and Geometry and go to Plane, and we're just going to drag out a plane in our top viewport. And you can see it here in our perspective viewport that I'll maximize. I'm going to hit G to get rid of the grid. And I need a whole bunch of segments in this. The more segments you have, the smoother it will be. I'm going to type in 100 by 100. And if I go to my edged faces, you'll see that that's quite a bit of segments. You can see that if I go any higher, like 200 by 200, I will get more subdivisions, but everything's going to move a little bit slower. Okay? So I think for the time being, I'm going to kind of split the difference here. I'll just go with 150 by 150. That should give me a nice, smooth, subdivided surface here to work with. Now I'm going to go back over here and turn off edged faces because I really don't need to see that from here on out. I'm also going to color this something that's a little bit more ground-like so that I can kind of see what's happening with this. Now under Modify, I'm going to go to my plane object and convert it to an editable poly. And under Edit Poly, I'm going to scroll up, or scroll down. Actually, let me set this up how you would see it. This is what yours will look like, just like that. You're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom tab, which is Paint Deformation, and it should look like this. Now, paint deformations will work just by you hit push-pull, and you can just start kind of drawing into your surface. But I'm going to set it up a little bit different. We want to set the push-pull direction. You can see here that Z is the up and down viewport, or up and down direction, so I'm going to push Z. And now when I push down with my left mouse button, I'm basically deforming that surface, wherever that little brush icon goes. But that's not all I want to do, because if I don't change anything else, I'm going to get this kind of mesa look, which really isn't going to do me much good. So I'm going to go to Brush Options right here. That'll bring up this screen. I'm also going to switch to my Wacom tablet. You can use a mouse for this, but if you use a mouse, you're going to have trouble getting nice little gradients for your deformation. So I'm going to use my Wacom tablet. And you can see without making any changes over here, if I push lightly on my Wacom tablet, which I'm doing now, it'll only pull it up a little bit. If I push down hard, and I'm pushing down really hard now, you can see that I can kind of taper this by using the Wacom tablet. So Wacom tablets are a much nicer thing to use in this case. But I still am going to make some changes over here. My minimum strength I'm just going to leave at 0. My maximum strength I'm going to put at 0.7, just so that I get a little bit softer brush. And under maximum size, I'm going to bump this up to 30 so that I end up with a little bit bigger brush, and my minimum size I'm going to make 10. The reason I'm going to do that is so that as I'm pushing down with my Wacom tablet, I don't get to that pointy little brush. I don't really need that one. And then under Pressure Options, if you're using a Wacom brush, this won't do you any good if you're just using a mouse, but if you're using a Wacom tablet, I'm going to drop it down to size and strength, and that'll simulate Photoshop's Wacom tablet abilities a little bit better. You can see here, without touching the Wacom tablet, that's a 10 minimum size. If I push down on the Wacom tablet, see how it gets bigger? And that's a maximum size. So what that'll allow me to do is kind of use the pressure sensitivity of the Wacom brush and just kind of feather some areas in. Okay, I'm going to delete those because I don't need those right now. Now also your brush, I can see mine set up here like I usually have it set up. I'm going to set this up. Your brush will look something like this. I'm going to delete that point. Oops, right there. Delete that guy. There it goes. Your brush will look something like this. Mine was set up how I usually have it set up. What I'm going to do, I don't like this pointy little brush. You can see over here, push pull again, that if I use the pointy little brush, I tend to get these little points at the top. I don't really like those. So I'm going to just kind of taper this up a little bit. You can see how it kind of comes in a little bit more like a marker now, and that will allow me to get these little mounds that are going to be a little bit more useful for me. Okay, I'll leave this one like it is. I'm going to leave all the other settings here just like they are. I can close that for the time being. And as long as I'm on the Z-axis, everything's going to come straight up. Now there's a couple more settings here. I'm going to make some little mounds here. Again, I'm using my Wacom brush so you can see how I can get some nice little gradients here. There we go. Okay. And if I hold down the Alt button, it will actually push down. Still pressure sensitive, but it's pushing down into the plane. And that's the Alt button. You can see it there. So holding down the Alt button will subtract or push into, and relax, this button right here, will kind of smooth everything out. And I don't have anything too jagged here. Let me make something that's really jaggedy. There we go. So something you can see right along the sides here, it's kind of all messed up. If I use relax and I go over those sides, now it's much smoother. You can see that this side here is smoother than that side. At least it is on my screen. It's subtle, but it is a little bit smoother. So use relax. Usually you use relax when you get the big spiky peaks. You can use relax to kind of knock them down. Okay? So I'm going to go undo this a little bit and go back to what I had before, push pull. And now I'm going to start painting in my mountains. My brush size, I'm going to hop back over to my brush options. I'm going to make the minimum brush size here 40, and I'm going to make the maximum brush size about 70 so that I can just kind of paint in my mountains really quick. I'm going to minimize that for a second. Oops. Push pull. Okay. And I'm going to assume that my tank is right here in the middle of the screen. And I'm going to assume that I need mountains all along the back here and the sides. So we need like a backdrop or a stage. Leave one section wide open. Don't put any mountains here in the front, wherever front is for you. Just on 3 of the 4 sides to create like a little backdrop. And because we're going to put a skybox behind this, that should give us everything that we want. Okay, now under push-pull, I'm just going to kind of rough in some mountains. You can actually go all the way to the edge. Don't worry if it's real angular to start with, because we're going to drop down our settings here in a little bit. So it's going to kind of look like pudding for a little bit. And I'm just going to kind of rough in some little rolling hills here in the front. Just let it overlap each other. It's not that important right now. And if you just kind of layer this, you'll start to get kind of a rocky surface right off the bat without any effort. You'll get that kind of blobby look to it. Make everything uneven, so add some higher points in there. Again, I'm using my Wacom tablet, so if you're using the mouse, you may get some spiky peaks. Just use relax to knock down those spiky peaks. So you can see here, I'm just going to paint in some high mountains down, lower mountains down here maybe. And by overlapping this, I'm getting that kind of rocky look. And I'm just building it up. Don't try to do it all in one pass. It won't look good if you do it that way. And there we go. Make sure you rotate this around every once in a while too, just so you can kind of see what's really happening there. Remember, you got to hit push-pull again when you leave the screen for any reason. There we go. And just slowly building that up. Wherever it overlaps is getting even rockier, which is what we wanted to see. Just kind of build that up. Don't be afraid to put a few little kind of rocky areas up in the front, because that'll give you some sort of foreground if there's higher points in the foreground than in the background. Okay, I'm going to go back to my brush options, which I had minimized. Otherwise, you can hit this button here. And I'm going to drop the minimum size down to 30 and the maximum size down to 50 in this case. So I've just got a smaller brush now. Minimize that. And I'm going to go back to what I'm doing. Just with my smaller brush, just to start to get some detailed areas in here. I want to work on this kind of foreground here and build this up a little bit. My tank's going to be sitting right here. This is a great big area. So this would be like, if your tank's here, this is like 5 miles across. We're going to scale it up so it's huge. So don't worry about little details right now. We're just dealing with kind of big details. There we go. Also, it's important, I didn't mention before, to keep a flat area. Make a perfectly flat area where your tank's going to be. That'll make it a lot easier to animate the tank. We don't want your tank climbing up the side of mountains necessarily, although it can. It's just a little bit harder. I'm going to build this up back here. And make sure you take a look at your scene kind of from this view. You can see that's what I've got right now. I kind of like what I'm starting to see there. Go back to push-pull. I'm going to pull up some of this area in the front so that I start to get some foreground right in here. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to build this area up in the front here, and you can see those shadows are starting to build, which separates our foreground from our background. Kind of like that. That's kind of neat. And I'm going to go back to my brush size, and again I'm going to drop this down to 10, and I'm going to drop the maximum down to 30. This is closer to the default setting. I'm also going to drop the max strength down to 0.5 in this case, so that I start to get a softer feel to the brush. And you can see that that softer feel allows me to get in lower areas to kind of carve some of these areas out where they kind of meet the ground here. I'm just going to kind of bump these around just to get a little bit more rocky feel. And you can't stretch these planes too much. If you start getting really spiky peaks, you're going to see a lot of stretching going on, and it'll carry over to your textures. So that's not really what we want in this project. We just kind of want some low rolling hills, just like I've got here. Try and build this area up here. I don't like that little bump that's going on right there. There we go. And I'm going to go back to my brushes and knock down the settings just a little bit more. I'm going to make the minimum size 5 and the maximum size 20 now. And the maximum strength I'm going to bump down to 0.4 and minimize that. And now you can see I have a tiny little brush. I'm going to zoom in for this. And what I'm going to do, using push-pull and holding down Alt this time, I'm going to start to carve in some areas. And you can see that it's starting to kind of push some areas down. And this will let me just kind of carve in some erosion marks or make this a little bit more interesting. As my brush crawls around here very slowly. Running out of some power here on my computer. Build that up a little bit more. And if you do something you don't like I don't like that little pushed in piece there, you just hit undo until you go back. And I think my brush is actually still a little bit too big for what I want to do here. So I'm going to make the minimum size 0 in this case, and the maximum size will be 10. And leave my maximum strength alone. You can see now the brush is super small. If it comes up here. There we go. You can see it's very tiny. And what I'm going to do is just kind of drag this along and make some kind of erosion marks or little fault lines and just kind of drag them through the scene like this. I like to do these vertical pieces. It makes the area look kind of like sedimentary rock. There we go. And you can do whatever you want in your scene. So you don't have to do this. I'm also doing this so I can show you what relax does in a second, not necessarily because. There we go. Just kind of run these through our scene, something like that. Now I'm going to go to relax, and I'm just going to, come on, paint right over these. And you'll see that some of the areas that were really spiky, I actually need to reset my settings again. It's not a strong enough brush right now for relax. I need to go up to maybe a 0.8. I'm going to make the maximum brush size 20 in this case. Need a little bit bigger brush for relax to work, right? There we go. I'm just going to kind of relax these areas, and you can see as it goes over them, especially here in these lower areas, see how it just kind of smooths them? Watch this area right here that's really bumpy, and as I go over it with relax, it's just going to smooth it out a little bit. Just enough so that I don't end up with that dotted look. I don't really like that. That's where my computer wasn't keeping up. There we go. Get rid of some of these areas up in here. And we'll just smooth them across. So that's going to be my, I'm going to turn off relax now, and I'm going to close my brush window if you've still got that open. That's going to be my scene. At this point, I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save this project. Save it on my hard drive so I don't lose it. And we'll call this our landscape. And this scene will be called Landscape 01. Okay, and now our scene is saved. You can see that's our landscape. Our tank is going to go right down in here. If I'm going to simulate a camera here. Here we go. Oops, coming in too low. There we go. My tank is going to be probably right around here, with a skybox on top of it, and you can see as we kind of look around there, that will look pretty good. Okay? So that's how we make a landscape using the displacement map, or the paint deformation map, sorry. Displacement map is next. Paint deformation map in Max. Alright?